I remember it was Super Bowl Sunday when I stopped feeling fetal movement. Everyone was watching the game and no one took me seriously. I was 5 weeks early, yet the doctors talked of naming the baby, of lullabies and nursery decorations. I had no sense of what was about to happen.
We'd been waiting 7 hours for an ambulance to transfer us from St. Luke's and Newburgh to Albany. And on the way up, I remember I was following the ambulance, and I kept on seeing this shadow in the back seat. And it was almost like out of a film, and I kept on chasing the shadow away. And I knew that it was a bad omen.
The trauma unit of maternity all rushed towards me, asking me and the paramedics, what happened? What took us so long? We were waiting for you. They wheeled me to one of the maternity rooms. Took the heart rate showed 80. They took it again, and again it was 80. And all hell just broke loose.
They had this one doctor who would come out and give me this information. It was always bad information. He never had anything good to say.
It took the doctors a minute to take him out. They whisked him out of the room into the neonatal unit care, and they performed various heroic measures to keep him alive.
I didn't know anything that was going on. Nobody told me anything until Mayra came out, and I knew that she was okay.
I remember I woke up about 2 hours after, I guess, Julian was brought out. I was an entity of pain. I couldn't really think about Julian. It was just all too terrible. I had no idea what happened. I knew something terrible happened. But I didn't know what. Apparently it was known to them that Julian was severely brain damaged, but I didn't. He was very small. He was covered with tubes. His eyes were closed. He was on drugs, even though I didn't know he was. So just to keep him under control, they sedated him for 6 days. I kept on saying I wanted to see his eyes. I didn't know what color they were. But he didn't open them. The third day, they performed the CAT scan, and they stopped me in the hallway and said, why don't you come to the social worker room for a talk? I said, what happened? I said, please come in. I said, asked me to sit down. I said, I don't want to sit down, just tell me what happened. I said, we had the CAT scan, and it seems that most of Julian's brain cells throughout the cortex are dead. I sat down.
The doctor said a blood vessel in the placenta went haywire and Julian stopped receiving blood and oxygen. No one understands what caused it. I asked them, is he going to be a vegetable? And they said, yes. I felt my whole world breaking into a million little pieces.
Julian was on life support for 5 days. At the time, I had no idea that I could terminate that if I had any choice. Julian's life was in the doctor's hands. Ever since the Reagan era, a regulation was mandated that the doctors have got to try and save every baby, no matter how injured he is, physically or mentally.
The doctors are telling us that Julian's case is 1 in a million, yet they introduce us to a little girl who was born with the same type of brain damage. We're realizing now that there are many children like Julian in this world. We are not alone.
He was born at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't really know anything was wrong when he was born. But the next morning, I went to the nurse's station, and I said, I'm Mrs. McComb, could I have the McComb baby? And they all looked at me, oh, you're Mrs. McComb. Another nurse, oh, you're Mrs. McComb. Oh, we'll get the doctor. They gave me the baby, and he said, I'll be down in a little while to talk to you. So I took the baby back to the room, and I'm opening his blanket, looking, counting his toes, and I said, maybe I missed something last night, and I really didn't know. He looked fine to me.
You take healthy births for granted. You know, we just never even crossed our mind to have something wrong with our child.
She was born perfectly normal. She was okay for 2 weeks. And then she started crying a lot, and she was throwing up. So I called the doctors. I said, you know, she needs to be seen by someone because she was really miserable. And the doctor started talking to me about colic and about me being a new mother. And he didn't really check her out or anything. He didn't do any tests at all. The very next day, she had respiratory arrest. The doctor thought she had colic, but she actually had spinal meningitis.
I was hemorrhaging, and by the time they got me to hospital, they discovered that the heartbeat they couldn't find it. The baby was delivered by emergency cesarean. They have to do resuscitation, and just at the end, as they were about to give up, he did take a breath.
After the life support was taken off Julian, then the doctors came to us and said, you can sign a do not resuscitate order. It was a very difficult decision. Both of us loved Julian with all our hearts, but he had very little life in him, and there was no hope for his recovery as far as his brain injury was concerned. So we decided to sign the form. But when we did that, he was out of life support system, and he was actually doing very well physically, and he wanted to live.
Julian's nurses keep on telling me what an incredible fighter he is. And even though there is still a lot of ambivalent feelings, I can't help but be amazed by his ability to hold on to life with the tiny bit that he's got.
By the 6th day, by the time Julian opened his eyes and I saw brown eyes like mine, we knew he was completely ours, and we were going to take him home and take care of him and do whatever it took to try and help him and make him better.
Let's see how much you did. You didn't do very much, did you? Huh? Once Julian came home, I suppose the hospital wiped its hands of Julian and basically just threw him into our lap. And here we had in our house a child who couldn't eat, who would throw up everything he ate, who just cried all day long.
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's horses and all the king's Humpty together again.
My memory is sitting up in Julian's room, which is where we conducted our initial interview, and looking around and seeing this beautiful, perfect baby's room and this really attractive, intelligent couple, and the baby, Julian, and then just hearing a story that was very, very sad.
I would stay up at night. Mira would do the day shifts and we would switch just to stay up with Julian and try to feed him and try to keep him calm, because the only way to keep him calm was to hold him and cuddle him. And it took 24 hours a day.
The question always comes up over and over again. Why? Why did this have to happen to our son? He's so innocent. Why can't anyone do something? The politicians, the doctors. Now that Julian is saved, please don't leave him.
I do remember during our first session getting the feeling that they weren't made completely aware of just how severely involved their child would ultimately be.
Some of the medications that he was on started to make him scream. They ate up his entire intestinal and stomach system. And we didn't know that was what was making him scream, but I didn't sleep for about 4 months. The minute that was the medication that we gave him before he went to bed, which we didn't know. But the minute we would give him that medication, he would fall asleep and he would then wake up screaming like every 5 minutes. And he would scratch me and pull my hair and hit me, and just, it was a blood-curdling scream. It wasn't like I'm crying, you know, a normal kid.
When Raymond developed asthma, we used to run back and forth to our local hospital. We'd just about get him home, and we'd have to take him back for treatments or adrenaline shots. And one time I had said to his neurologist, I said, this running back and forth, I wish there was something else that we could do to control it a little bit better. And she said to me, well, Mrs. Dunn, she said, why don't you drive a little bit slower down the road, and maybe it'll be all over before you reach the hospital. And I told her that I was sorry that I couldn't do that. I had to do what I felt was right as Raymond's mother. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, when he was in the neonatal clinic for 2 months, why did you work so hard to save him? If you had worked a little bit less harder, I would not have known, and maybe Raymond and I would not be having the heartache today. And she said, well, we have to do that. We have to do that. I said, well, then you should be able to understand what I have to do today.
I think we've all had some bad experiences, perhaps, but I sense sometimes in doctors, they feel badly because they cannot cure this child. This child will be the way he or she is for the rest of his life, perhaps, and they are trained to cure, to make things better, and when they find out they can't cure this child, it's intimidating to them. And I know in my case, I had many doctors who gave us financial breaks, gave us their home phone numbers. We've had some really, really wonderful people. And then we've sensed in other doctors a lack of respect for Brad because he is the way he is.
There's the suffering that goes on a daily basis. Not my suffering, but Julian's suffering.
All these new technical terms, I don't understand them. Fetal anemia, severe birth asphyxia, flat EEG, bilateral cortical injury, microcephaly, cerebral palsy, generalized epilepsy, phenobarbital, clonus. I only know these words as they relate to Julian, his central nervous system disorder, his profound brain injury.
Hey, bring back my baby to me, bring back my baby to me, bring back my baby to me.
Push-le. Coquille.
I used to think if this isn't perfect, it won't do. It's got to be perfect, it's got to be right, or I can't accept it. Initially with Jonas, when he was first born and he was away in Albany, I talked to the paediatrician who had saved him, and you know, she said, can you accept a child that isn't going to be 100%? Can you accept a child that's maybe going to be 75%? And I want to say, no way. There's no way I want that 100% baby. That's my dream, that's my son. This is the boy that I've given my husband. And I want him to walk and talk and sing and smile. You know, and as the weeks went on and we finally realised how severely damaged he was, it wasn't 75%, it wasn't 50%, it wasn't 25%. Jonas breathed, and that was his life.
Before Brad was born, I was talking to a friend who was also pregnant, and I was pregnant, and I said to her, you know, I'm really afraid of having a child with problems. And I just meant just a little problem. I said, I don't think I could handle that. And she said, you know, I'm really afraid of having a premature baby. And I said, you want to know something even worse? I said, I even am a little afraid of having a baby who's, you know, has some deformity on the face or just plain ugly, you know. And as it turned out, I had Brad, who was severely handicapped. She had 2 premature babies. And when I got pregnant with Timothy, I said, well, here comes the ugly baby. And yeah, he's a very handsome baby.
The therapists were wonderful, especially the special education teacher. She would work with Julian and with us. She would talk to him and to me. And we would just talk about how I felt.
It was very clear that this was a family that would be eligible for early intervention services in our program, as Julian was clearly delayed in all areas of his development.
No, too much. Oh, let's try a different one. Will that work sometimes? Sometimes does that work?
Usually I work with Julian like 30 or 40 minutes, I would say, and he's pretty responsive usually. He usually does make some eye contact with me, and then we'll get some vocalizations. You know, not always and not consistently, but he will make some of that contact with us. Usually in most of those weight-bearing positions, I can facilitate Julian to lift his head. Can usually get some nice propping up on his elbows or his arms if I help stabilize him, and that's important then for further upper extremity development.
Julian didn't do anything at the time. He wasn't able to sit. He wasn't able to look into your eye and connect. He held his head pretty well, which was what everyone said was the best thing was going for him, because usually brain injured children like Julian can be very floppy and no control over their parts of their bodies. Julian at least had some control over his neck and upper extremity.
It's changing my perspective on what progress means, what progress might mean to a kid who will ultimately walk, no matter in what manner, to a child who maybe will be able to lift their head for a few seconds longer than they currently are.
We used to work with Julian every single day for hours. We would move his limb, we would move his arms, we would move his legs. I would put him on the floor and try to get him to bear weight on his arms and push up.
At this point, with a normal child, chronologically, they'd be walking, running, talking, gaining words, mastering certain movements. Julian at this point is still working on mastering head control, being able to raise his head up and off a surface and be able to look around.
There was nothing that he could do, and the big thing was, does he love me? Does he know I'm his mum when he can't see me? He can't hear me.
I don't know if Julian loves me.
I see my son locked in his body too, where he can't talk. And I see his eyes sometimes looking at me, even though he's blind and cannot see. It's a look like, Mommy, why can't I be out there with you? Or why can't you be in here with me?
Life is difficult enough for a person with all of his brain and all of his senses. A child without the ability to eat, without the ability to recognize his parents, the ability to communicate, the ability to hear, the ability to see perfectly. It's very hard.
A few days after Julian was born, I asked the doctors, how soon can I get pregnant again? That was the healthiest thing I could think of. Until an intern told me that what had happened to Julian was genetic, that it could happen again. It was later during one of Julian's many hospital stays, and I was already pregnant again. I sat there at Julian's bedside and looked out the window to the street below, thinking, I can't do this again.
Hey diddle 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 diddle, the cat and the cow and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the cow jumped over the little dog laughed to see some splash, and the dish ran away, and the dish ran away with the spoon. Hey diddle 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 diddle, the cat and the cow and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the cow jumped over the little dog.
Daniel's birth, in one way, made things much, much better for us, but also much worse, because we realized, as we saw Daniel growing up, how truly miserable Julian's life was. The tiniest little movements that Daniel made when he was 1 week old were more than Julian had made in 2 years. And you would look at Daniel on one side of the room and then look over to Julian, and he just burst out crying. Sometimes we'll give him a bath together, and then put Julian in the bathtub, and Daniel's in front of him, he's playing around, and I'll prop up Julian and pretend that Julian's playing with Daniel. But I'm basically, like, you know, holding a puppet up.
I think we have to almost come to a decision as to what is a human being when we have a child so handicapped who maybe just sleeps all day. We start to wonder, and I think a lot of people wonder at the bottom of their hearts, is this a person?
There are times when Julian is refluxing badly and his food goes back up his esophagus and chokes him. Lawrence and I always said that if something like that happened, we would try to let him go. But when he's turning blue and fighting for air, we both panic and do everything in our power to save him.
Let me just finish it so you have a little bit. That's it. I'm done. What can I do? Julian. Tell me. Tell me. I'm just very worried because I'm not sure I know what's wrong with him.
I have an enormous ambivalence towards the gastrostomy tube, which has just been replaced by a button, because you're sustaining a life artificially, and I find that unethical. There's no way I would unplug it. There's no way I would stop feeding Julian because he's my child and because I love him. But I find it extremely unethical and inhuman.
I mean, while we were feeding him, and it would take anywhere between an hour to 2 hours at feeding, we would be the torturers and Julian would be the tortured. Until we finally, I mean, we went to a lot of doctors, and each doctor would suggested a tube. I mean, said that Julian would probably never be able to eat by mouth, or at least not for a long time. I don't know. Hoppa! That was a good burp.
In the first couple of months, people were overwhelmingly good to us. Our church made meals for us, and my husband's mom was there with us. My parents came. People called. Not a lot of people came. After the first year or so, they think you're used to it, so I think that's when you start to get isolated and lonely, and you don't want to tell them they say, how is everything? You just start to say okay, because they couldn't handle hearing how it really is. So
it's really hard to have time to just be able and sit down and have a cup of coffee, with somebody. Most people that come and visit, they're like heartbroken when they leave, when they see Tiffany.
I've had 17 years of watching Raymond gasp for his breath, stop breathing, shake him, in seizures, stupors, comas. And we don't walk ahead. We may go a little bit, but then we come back again. And all that suffering in between, all that heartache, yeah, there's smiles, there's happy times, but they're very few. And there's an awful lot of pain in the years. And 17 years has been a long time. And maybe just knowing that your little one is maybe at peace.
There were many nights when he'd be crying and seizing. He was continually dithering, and I'd kneel beside his little crib and I'd plead that he would be taken, because I believe in I know that there is life after death, and the quality of his life was so limited that he was trapped by this body that wouldn't function properly. And I was desperate to ease his suffering and the suffering that we as a family suffered. I had 3 other children besides him. And I remember one night getting out of bed and kneeling again by his cot and asking Heavenly Father to release him. I got into bed this night and I laid in bed and I thought about what I had asked. Was this really what I wanted? And I got out of bed and I knelt beside his crib and I said, Heavenly Father, I've changed my mind. Let him live. Let me have him in the morning. And I got out of bed in the morning and he was still there. And it was about, I guess, a week later when he did die. When we were at home, the doctor had come and she told us that this was it. We could take him to the hospital or we could keep him at home. It was our choice, and we decided to keep him at home. And just as a family, we sat that night and held him and expressed our love for him. And then I just held him. And then he just went. He was gone.
I wouldn't wish on anybody the agony of having a child with a disability. But I really believe that everybody would be a better person by experiencing what it's like to have a child with a disability. I think we all tend to take a lot of things for granted. And I have 2 children. I worked here while having my 2 children. I knew every possible horrible thing that could happen. And it was not an easy thing to do, to make that decision. But I know that working here has certainly benefited me and being exposed to this population over the years. And I think that we have to not keep hiding these kids from the public. I think people need to know that there are children with disabilities who also have lots of abilities and who we can learn from.
Julian has now reached the age where he can go to ARC, the Association for Retarded Citizens. It's a local, government-supported school. It's small and has kids ranging from mild Down syndrome to kids as medically involved as Julian. The people who work there are wonderful, and we feel we've finally found a niche for Julian and ourselves.
Julian's in a class that we call Sarah's class. There are 7 children in that class, and Julian is one of the 7. The children in Sarah's class are considered to be multiply handicapped. That means that they have more than one handicapping condition. And most of the children in that particular class are among the most severely handicapped children that we serve in our program.
Press the switch with your foot, this foot. Want to hear the swan? Press the switch. Press the switch like a big girl. Good girl. And on his farm he had a... Okay, Julian, your turn. Want to use the switch? Use the switch. Press the switch. Press the switch, Julian. Good boy. Good boy.
What we try to emphasize is the abilities of each child as opposed to the disabilities. We can find something positive with each kid. Each kid has its own little personality. Each kid has something that they excel in. Children who have hearing impairments, then you work with the sense that works the best. If they're visually impaired, then you give them lots of auditory input. And each child has his own abilities and therefore his own needs.
Oh, man, good girl. You're throwing it all over the floor. You're such a good girl. How about this hand? Oh, boy. Is that nice? Okay, Amanda, twice on the floor. Oh, Julian, is this fun? Is this fun, playing with it? How about this hand? Gotta get both hands. Amanda, you want another turn? Good boy, Julian.
Julian loves to smile. There's lots of things that he responds to, and the staff in that classroom really enjoy working with him.
What's in your hand? Shake it up.
Shake it up, Julian.
Good boy. Where is it? Good boy.
Sometimes it's very hard for a parent to realize that we can't fix their kid. And sometimes it's very hard for us to realize that we can't fix their kids either. But all we can do is give what we can give and hope that that's going to be enough. I would say our greatest goal for Julian is for Julian to be happy. Julian's disabilities are such that Julian will never walk, Julian will never talk. But Julian can be loved and Julian can give love, and I think we're off to a good start.
Boys and girls and Julian will say goodbye. Very nice.
Ever since we brought Julian home from the hospital, there were family and friends who thought we should place him, either through adoption, an institution, a home, or other facility. Our first reaction was always, no way, he's our son. But deep in our hearts, we were relieved to know that if one day we run out of steam, there will be options out there.
You're not. When Brad was first born, I had a lot of trouble coping with it, but, and there were tears, there were many tears, but I was able to accept Brad the way he is, and he's a joy to me. The hardest part is the fact that we had to place him. And that is what I've had the hardest time with. When I first went to see him at Yale, first time I met him, he grabbed my finger and he just held on to it. And I promised him I'd never go away, I'd never leave him. People say, well, think of it like boarding school. You know, your child goes, we have them home every weekend on vacation, and your child goes on Sunday night, and you see him again on Friday. But every Sunday, it's goodbye again.
I've looked at places thinking that maybe she should go someplace, like even an institution where maybe they can do better for her. And then when it comes time for, you know, if they say there's an opening someplace, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I need to have her near me. And if I'm really, really upset, the only thing that can calm me is to go sit with Tiffany. She calms me somehow. So anytime I need to relax, I just go sit with Tiffany.
I think 4 years of me saying, next year will be better. I'll get him over seizures, I'll get him over the stomach, the refluxing, and then the pneumonias. He was home one winter on antibiotics for 6 weeks with the IV. We tried the ketogenic diet for the seizures, and that worked for a little while, and then the seizures got even worse than they were to begin with.
Yeah, you're an open wound. It seems like, well, our wounds just never healed. There was always one tragedy after another, so you never got a chance to heal. You know, it's almost like, you know, you lost a child, but you got to battle to help them survive.
Some older friends of mine kind of said to me, Connie, you have to, you know, save your family. You have a husband and you have another child too.
We got to a point of screaming for 4 years. Nothing you could do to comfort him, the frustration, you know, there were times I just had to leave the room and go downstairs and, you know, just cry out of helplessness because there was nothing I can do.
I said to myself, if I can find a place that could take better care of him than me, then we'll do it. So the whole time I was walking around, I was thinking, okay, I guess I have to admit this now. They can do better than I can.
I never intended to place him. I intended for him to live with us for as long as he could, for as long as I could. But as things became harder and I knew I couldn't handle it anymore, and I didn't know what to do, and finally I came to the decision that I had to place him, I was crying every single day. I kept on walking around in the house and I said, he's crying. I kept on hearing him cry upstairs, and I would run upstairs to his room because I thought he was crying. For many, many days, I still felt him in the house.
I've seen parents who all of a sudden their children were someone that they were running around looking for doctors and specialists and all of those devastating things, you know, and now all of a sudden they look at their children as their children.
I remember when we first brought Julian to the Center for Discovery. Renata came to us with her sunny smile and swept Julian out of my arms. Julian's face beamed with happiness, and I knew then that we were doing the right thing.
When you see someone who comes here and you know the sorrow, you know what they've gone through, you know, you can see it in their faces, you can feel it just radiating out of them. And for all of us here to know that we can be a part of the transition from that pain to another place in their lives where their lives are, they still have that sadness, but it becomes more intermittent.
The center is such an incredible place. It houses 82 kids, many like Julian. It's funded by state agencies and Medicaid, with additional private funds for all the extra services.
We keep saying that they're our extended family, and they are. But
They take care of our son.
Yeah, and in truth, we you know, we basically shift that responsibility over so much because it just took so much out of us.
Here comes Julian to join you.
since he moved up here, finally, the isolation in many ways is totally gone. He found his world, he found his life. This is his little world, his little haven where he lives. When I visit him and I take him in a wheelchair and we stroll around the grounds and we run into so many people that know him, say, "Hi Julian, hi Cookie Face." They come and I give him a big kiss and a big smile spread across his face. He's known here, he's loved here, he makes a difference in people's life. He's not someone that people are afraid of, they shy away from, they think maybe he shouldn't be here. He's someone that people like, that people want.
Julian, this is our ferret, Killian. Remember him? Can you feel him as he look in your hand? He's probably licking the salt on your hand. What's that feel like, huh? Has he got a rough tongue? Kind of like a cat. He's almost like a cat. He's like a kitten. You see he's got his whiskers. Can you feel those whiskers? Put the whiskers up there. You feel those whiskers up against your face? You feel that? Huh? You like that, huh? Was he giving you a little kiss, wasn't he? Because he's so nice and friendly.
I remember when you brought him here, Mira, and I saw his face and just fell in love. There was just something about him that just captured my heart. You know, he's beautiful, and he's sweet, and he's gentle. And for us, he challenges us. It's always tapping into parts of us trying to figure out how can we accommodate you? What can we develop in order for you to acquire more independence so that your life is going to become more meaningful and fulfilling?
When I look at Julian, I see him as directing a whole program of people around him, their lives, their philosophies about life, seeing him as someone that they share love with. He's a special child.
His arms all the way up. This morning we're working with Julian in the water, and as you can tell, he loves it. The water is very important when you're teaching a child to move. And for Julian, who has a spastic type of cerebral palsy, it's very difficult for him to move. The buoyancy of the water allows him to move very freely. And it allows him to activate some of the muscles that he couldn't ordinarily do outside of a water medium. When he first gets into the water, we do a little bit of stretching and get him used to the feel of the water. And then fairly independently, and at this time fairly quickly, he starts some of his motions, which are some free kicking, which again, when he's out of the water, is very difficult. But in the water, if you watch, he's allowed to float up and really move his feet fairly independently and get some of that reciprocal movement that you see when a child begins to walk.
A lot of the work that we do through PT is related to the fact that Julian's muscles are stiffer than one finds typically, and in order for him to be able to use his head control and to be able to use some weight bear onto his shoulder and onto his arm the way you see here, you really have to be able to help him control some of that stiffness. And one of the things that's very important for Julian is that he experience a whole variety of positions and that he not be obligated to just being lying down or just being in a wheelchair. And he's doing very good work right now. His head is really in a good position and he's listening to me, I think. But his chin is tucked a little bit and his head is not far back, and it's easy for him right now to be aware of what's going on around him. And sometimes he has to work hard to be able to be aware. But one of Julian's great strengths is that he's a very social guy. He likes to be part of people's day-to-day activities, and he works hard to make sure that he is part of it. He's not one to pull back. All of the control for Julian through his body now is his. He's doing all of his own work through his back and his hips, and I'm only helping to keep his feet down. So we call that some help with distal control.
And music is something that I learned early on was very important to Julian. When I first met Julian, His mom informed me that he really was very much a fan of opera.
Yes.
And when I got some recordings of opera, that was the first time I really saw him very actively
make a choice.
Like it? Let's do it again.
These children all grow and they develop. It's just like any one of us, Mira. If you don't challenge me, if you don't believe in me, then I'm not going to grow. If you don't love me and you don't give me a nurturing environment, then I'm not going to grow.
I think I'll stay here. One day, a dragonfly flew over the town. Run for your lives, cried the people of Pee-wee.
Every day you come in and you believe in this person and you respect them and you give them dignity and you give them quality of life. And so who knows? Who knows? You know, like what are the limits? When do they stop growing? I don't know, because I haven't seen one of them stop growing. Not one.
These kids got so much love to give, and they teach you so much. They teach you that it's more than one way to communicate. You know, you don't have to be able to talk. Ryan, sure, he makes his noises, but he can't really talk. But most of the time, we know exactly what he wants. When he's tired, we know he's tired. When he said that's enough, we know that's enough.
Yeah. You ready to start? You want to go test the ready?
Yeah.
Sometimes people think all you have to do is take care of them. Keep them neat and clean and safe. That's enough. It's not enough. A lot of places can do that. A lot of places can keep kids safe and neat and clean. We want them to have a life here. That's what this place is about. Taking kids who, for many years, were hidden away, put in institutions, because nobody expected anything of them. Nobody thought they could do anything.
Moves his head and his wings move.
Children, like Julian, great power. There's power in these children. And if you figure out a way to let them get that energy and sense themselves, really the sky's the limit for these folks. And again, we're at a great time with technology and other opportunities to really make a meaningful change in the way they live.
When you're ready, give it a good kick. Okay, you're doing great. Here he goes. 1, 2, 3. There you go. Excellent. All right. Great job. Should be very proud of that. Yep, I'm going to write Mom and tell her what a great job.
We've engineered learning environments such as the Learning Center here that are free, open spaces that just naturally draw the natural inquisitiveness out of a child and really gets them in a frame of mind that they want to learn, they want to explore. And the teacher then facilitates that natural curiosity to learn.
Just like you took your tray off, Julian. This would be where you steer the boat.
You're doing great, Katie. Here, put the beanbag in. Whenever you're ready, you can go. Okay? Go. Whoa!
Technology is just exploding, just exploding. You know, the kid can move his elbow, move his finger, move his hand, move his head, move his nose. They can start moving that cursor around. They can see that reaction on the screen right in front of them. It won't be too long before an eye gaze will move that cursor around the screen.
I think if we pull it a little bit up, then we can get the bullseye. So let's put the beanbag. You set? Let's see if it's gonna get to number 5. We'll give you the 5.
The other big issue that we've addressed for communication is looking at alternative means for him to communicate through looking at different kinds of communication devices that would allow him to make choices and communicate his intentions.
Does Julian's existence qualify spending all of this money? Like, are we supposed to spend all of this money and have all of this manpower involved in taking care of this one little boy?
There's a big push in the neonatal centers to really save children. Don't let anybody die.
You know, if the child dies, it's a horrendous thing. Or if someone, you know, nowadays pulls the plug on somebody who's terminally ill or whatever, you know, it goes to court, and there are, you know, many conflicting views on that. When you get a child with a significant disability, you know, there is all these heroics to save that child. And then they get to the first neurologist visit, and the neurologist says, I don't know what to do with this kid. All I can tell you is that he's a vegetable. He's not going to amount to anything. You know, there isn't anything that I can do. You're better off placing him in an institution where he'll live out the rest of his days. And a parent goes from all of these heroics to, we've got to save your child, and they go through all the trauma, you know, of working through that, and 1 minute they're breathing and the next they're not, and then they're saved again and they're breathing again, and finally they have this baby who lived through unbelievable amounts of intrusive kinds of things, and they're just happy for the life. And then in 2 months they take it to the doctor, who says, there's no quality here to this life.
So what do you do when a child is born and he's born into a lot of complications, but you have the technology to fight it? I don't know if to reverse it, but to fight it, do you use it or not?
If it's done in a timely fashion, then it can be dealt with. If they tell you right off the bat what the issues are. But if they draw it out to 6 days and they give you more and more hope, then it's a moot point.
If they came to you when Julian was born and say, well, I mean, it's not like they have time, because when a child first comes out,
that's true,
and he's not breathing, I guess, and they have the ability to get him to breathe, they will use it. Right. But once they've gone through it and he's breathing, then maybe at that point they should come to the parents. But the problem is that the parent, I don't think, is able to deal with it.
We find that our parents are just so conflicted when they come to us. They don't have any expectations for their child because they were taken away from them. Our system, or the Center for Discovery, really is about giving back hope to parents.
I went to college on a football scholarship and had, 3 knee operations in my last year, and I had to find something else to do with my life. And I switched around for a while, and I came here, and I thought for a while maybe it had something to do with that jock background and coming here and seeing these kids who could maybe not do what I could do.
Although he's getting big now.
And I said,
He's going to just sit with you for a while.
maybe I can do something with them. I think in the old days, I used to tell people in this business, don't get attached. They're just going to break your heart. Don't get attached. And good people, not terrible. Just that was the way to deal with it, because you're dealing with life and death, and it never stops.
He's a good puppy, isn't he?
But you got to do it. You can't do this disconnected. You can't do this without falling in love. You can't do it.
A severely involved person, someone who, even the language of how we labeled people, profoundly retarded, to my way, condemned the child to, death on earth, that they were too disabled, too everything to achieve anything. Therefore, the term vegetable and all those other things were established. We now know, through a lot of our own personal life, that if you promote the well-being, the process of wellness, and you use language that promotes possibility, that you're going to get it.
Julian has enriched me on many levels. On one hand, it made me a much harder person because of the hardship that he brought into my life and the struggles and the pains. And I became a harder person, I became a bitter person. On the other hand, he made me a much more giving human being than I ever thought I will be.
It's changed me completely as a person. There's a lot of things I do as a result of Julian's birth. I express myself, through the dioramas and through paintings because of Julian.
When I first started my work, there were less kids out there this significantly involved because they didn't live that long, and I would talk to families, and we really felt ourselves sort of a closed group. As we've marched on in time, if you take a real broad look at our society, very few people go through our lifetime without experiencing tremendous pain. We're probably for the first time in our society able to really look at this as a fair balance, that pain is generally inflicted across the board, and that you don't need to pity the process. You need to sort of figure out how to get through it, how to advance your thinking to see that there's hope and possibilities.
And she has Rett syndrome, and that's why she's always got her hands in her mouth, and she has her mama's eyes, though, those big, bright.
If you respect this child as a learner, they're quite capable of learning. You do need to know what you're doing, and you have to have a strong knowledge background, and you have to have the technology and those kind of things. But these children are absolutely capable of learning.
Feel those scales. Maybe if I turn them over, you can touch what just the bigger scales on his belly feel like. Feel those? And right now you can see his tongue coming out, huh, Julian? That's how he smells. Remember, he gets little particles on his tongue, and he puts it up inside his mouth, and that's where he gets it's called the Jacobson organ, and that's how he smells.
I think there's an opportunity in our society to finally become understanding that no one escapes the process. A parent with a child with a multiple handicapping condition is dealing with that pain and that struggle, and we want a society to help them do that. Hopefully we continue to develop strategies to keep families empowered and in love with their children and connected with the center, and create new ways to give brothers and sisters opportunities to stay connected, because it's through that connection where the child really becomes a person in our society.
I like being up there. I hate leaving him there. I don't like to leave my son behind. I have two other children who run around and who are all there and who live here, and every time I wish Julian could be the same. I wish Daniel had a bigger brother who he could run after her.
Do you think Julian is happy?
Sometimes.
When is he happy?
Probably when we visit him. Sometimes.
I could not tell you in a million years if Julian is happy. I have yet to see a hint of happiness in Julian. There is a smile now and then. However, I must tell you that the one thing the neurologist could tell us was that he would smile, because it's a reflex. So that is one reflex he has. Whether or not it's associated to joy, to happiness, I can't tell you that.
No, I think it's associated with happiness. I think that Julian has happy moments in his own way, and it's probably not the same type of happiness that you experience or that I experience. And then again, maybe it is in a basic sort of way.
Right, that's true.
Once upon a time, there was an old big boy by blood named Julian. He was walking with me and Daniel and Lawrence and Mira and Julian. And we was walking and we had a nice picnic at the pool. It's okay.
Even though Jonas isn't here, my love for him increases. I think of him and I love him, and You know, there is sorrow there, but at the same time, there's great joy.
As long as she's with me, I have to take care of her. So she may not be with us, you know, another 20 years, another 10 years even. So whatever time she's here, she deserves my time.
I just pray that before anything happens to me, the Lord will take him back home, so I don't have to worry about dying before him.
As a mother, you want to help your child. That's all you want to do is stop the crying, help the pain, and I couldn't stop it. I'm so thankful because I got now to see Brad as a happy little boy.
The kids make you pay attention to things in life. We're so busy all the time. Everybody's always running around, accomplishing things. And then you meet the kids. And all of a sudden, everything changes. And you stop and you slow down and you pay attention and you look in their eyes and you touch their face, you know. And another world is opened up to you that's just filled with spirit. It's not about what someone can do or can't do. It's about who are you from your soul.
In the twinkle of the early morning, through my window pane, under a tilting peach tree bearing fruits from Magic Kingdom, Julian stands and walks from his wheelchair, wanting pain, while fleshy fruits of wonder make him step and hum. Towards the dissipating fog he stumbles, then falls. He lies into the dying mists. His bellow calls, crippled and happy, pained and beauty, strong and devoted, wrong and retarded. A son and brother, friend and martyr, grandson, student, infant, patient, cripple, monster, hero, error, with eyes aglow with wanderlust and nothingness. There is a magic kingdom where brothers run as musketeers, where laughter seeps through clouds of tears, where sorrow has no dominion. And when around I look, I see a tree, a blade of grass, a cloud, a sky so blue, a breeze gently blowing past. I feel the rhythms of those who love and those who hate. And as for me, for love, I hope it's not too late.